episode number 77. You can get all the show notes and resources at dadhackers.us/077. What's up, Dad Hackers? My name is Patrick Antonucci, and I am the host and founder of this podcast and community of Dad Hackers. Dad Hackers is a community of Christian fathers who are devoted to encouraging, equipping, and enabling one another to become the men that God has created and called us to be, so that we can raise up the next generation of fully devoted followers of Christ and leave a legacy of multi-generational faithfulness. Now, on this show, we primarily interview Christian men to dive deep into their experiences and insights into what it means to be a Christian man, a Christian husband, a Christian father, and a Christian leader. We ask questions that dig deep into the thinking and rationale and experiences of these men so that we can all learn and grow into the men that God is calling us to be. I'm so thankful that you've joined us today. Make sure you subscribe so that you never miss any of our value-packed episodes. Also, please make sure you leave an honest review if you're listening to this in iTunes or any other platform that takes reviews. Reviews boost the show's ratings, which means that more dads are going to come across our show and benefit from the content that we put out. I also wanted to let you know that we do have a free private Facebook group just for Christian dads. So after the show, make sure you hop on over to the show notes. There's a link for that in there as well. All right, guys, this is part 3 of a multi-part series on raising children. I did a couple episodes a few episodes back, and so this is part 3. There will be more parts to follow, and I'm going to sprinkle them in over the coming weeks and months in the podcast. So if you're just coming into this one, I suggest you go back and listen to parts 1 and 2, which I'll link up in the show notes, and I'll also link in there other guys that I've interviewed that are involved with the National Center for Biblical Parenting. I've interviewed the president and founder, Scott Taransky, as well as other guys that are involved with the organization. So those have been really good and helpful episodes and shows and interviews where we really dive into this whole aspect of heart-based parenting. Okay, so just by way of review, over the past couple of sessions where we talked about heart-based parenting, we went over the first few steps that you need to take when beginning your journey of heart-based parenting. And these are mostly mindset things to get you ready in the first few couple steps to enter into this heart-based parenting approach to raising children. It's really a mindset shift and a shift in your behavior and practices as a parent. I'm going to be completely honest. I am still working on this myself. I've gone through the program with Scott Taransky. I've gone through the coaching program to become a coach, and I've implemented a lot of these things in my home, and I've seen some changes in my children for the better. It's really cool stuff. And I'm still learning and I'm still growing. So I'm going to share with you some of the things that I've been learning. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to me. One big thing to keep in mind is that while the change process can sometimes seem hopeless with your child, at times you implement these strategies and you feel like you're not making any headway. Change can happen. I want to encourage you when you have a specific plan that is consistently applied. We can look for noticeable, even significant changes at times in 40 days. We have a problem that we have a microwave society, an instant feedback society, and we want to see changes in our kids like the moment we implement something differently. But it doesn't work like that with a heart-based approach. It takes consistent effort with a specific strategic plan over a significant amount of time. Not an inordinate amount of time, but 40 days is a good gauge of time, and it's kind of biblical. So this week we're going to talk about specifically where you want to go with your child. If you think about the parenting process, you're basically on a journey with your child. You're at a starting point, and typically with some kind of tendency in your child that needs to be addressed, and you want to get to a destination of correcting that tendency and creating internal change in your child. This is not just a behavior modification approach, a reward and punishment type of approach. We're really trying to train the hearts of our children so that they can be internally motivated to do the right thing and glorify God in what they do. And one of the traps that parents find themselves in is simply telling their kids to stop doing certain behaviors. Stop it, cut it out, quit it, those types of things. And this results in frustration and anger on the part of the parent and the child, because it's not really an effective technique for creating change in your child. You're just simply telling your kid to stop doing something. What kids need is a parent with a specific plan for getting them where they need to be. And so in this episode, we're going to look at developing a strategy for helping your kids change effectively. So we're going to jump right in. There's 5 steps that I want to talk about, and then we're going to look at having a meeting with your child after you walk through these 5 steps. These 5 steps aren't going to take an inordinate amount of time, but they're going to take some thought. They are going to take some reflection, and you are going to have to write some things down. So I suggest you, if you're watching this recorded, grab pause it and grab a sheet of paper and jot some things down. So step number 1 is targeting the issue. The first thing you need to do is identify exactly what you want to address with your child. Take some time right now and write down specific behaviors, tendencies, or patterns that you want to address in your child that are creating a problem, that are creating a conflict in your home, that are preventing things in your home from getting done, that are causing family life to not run smoothly. How is your child contributing to that by way of their behavior and their attitude? And at this point, you're simply writing the issues down. You're not trying to diagnose why they're occurring. You're not trying to analyze them deeply. Some examples are if it's backtalk or disrespect or tantrums or fighting with siblings, non-compliance, or poor attitude. You're just simply writing down the behavior. You're not describing it. You're just writing down the behavior. You're not analyzing it. You're just writing down the behavior. Whatever the issues are, just write them down. The sky is the limit. And don't worry, you're not going to share this list with your child. You're just writing some things down to get the ball rolling, to be able to start targeting the issue. You're just trying to get everything down on paper so you can kind of look at it, and then we're going to use that in the next couple steps. So write all that stuff down. So the second step is you want to sort through those issues. Once you have all these issues down on paper that you want to address, or maybe you like to put it in electronic format or something like that, you need to sort through them. And I will say, kind of sidebar, it would be good if you and your wife did these exercises together. Maybe if you're working through them right now and she's not available, totally cool. But then kind of talk to her and walk her through the steps that we're going through today so that she can come alongside you. Lots of times a wife can offer a perspective that a man can't see or doesn't see. And so you want to bring her alongside to help you in this. Plus, it's the parenting journey, and you both want to be on the same page. So you have all these issues down, all these problem behaviors. You want to sort through them. I'm sure several of the issues can be grouped into common categories. What you're looking for is overall patterns. Several issues, for example, may be an indication of selfishness. Others may show a problem with anger. Others, impatience, and so forth and so on. You want to group these together. Now, this step is very important because in step 1, you may have listed well over 50 issues that need to be addressed with your child. It's not uncommon for parents to be able to think of 50, 60, 70 things that are a problem issue with their child. We're not trying to nitpick the kids, but we're just trying to get everything down on paper so that we can begin to develop a specific strategic plan for addressing some of the tendencies and issues and attitudes that we are seeing with our children. But once you have all these down, we want to sort them. We want to sort them into common categories, and your goal should be able to sort them into 3 to 4 main areas of concern. If you still have many categories after you sort them, if you're like, okay, I got 50 issues, I've sorted them into 10 categories, you want to go back and you want to broaden like kind of the definition or what you're thinking of in terms of the different categories, broaden them so that you can really sort them into 3 or 4 main areas. Now, this might take a little bit of work. This might take some time. This might take some thought, but this is a very, very important step. See if you can whittle it down to 3 or 4 main areas. Now, as a warning, like I said, this process might take a little bit of time. Don't be in a rush. This is something you're not going to want to complete in just 10 minutes. Sometimes you need time to think and time to add to the list. Sometimes things will come up as you live life and as you interact with your child, and as something might just come into your mind as you're driving to work or as you're going through your day, or your wife might say, hey, I was just thinking about this. Add it to the list. Work to take no more than 5 days to get this list finalized and sorted, though. And the reason I say that is because we can sometimes want to get every single thing down and do it perfectly. That would be nice, but then there's no time limit on it, and this piece could take forever, this step, and we don't want that. We want to get enough down to begin moving forward and working. We can always tweak things as we go, and you can always come back and work on another issue later. You don't have to have an exhaustive list, just one that's comprehensive enough to get started. So once you have your list sorted, this is the important part. You want to pick the category that is in most urgent need of being addressed. Okay? And then capture the weakness that is illustrated in 1 or 2 words. So you have, let's say you have 50 things that need to be addressed. You narrow those down and you group them and sort them into 3 or 4 categories. And then you look at those 3 or 4 categories and you think, okay, which one is causing the most stress, the most frustration, the most anger, the most conflict, that is presenting the greatest challenge to family life? Pick that category, okay? And then think of 1 or 2 words that would encapsulate that whole category. And then we can move on to step number 3. Step number 3 is where you want to specify the issue. So far up to this point, what we've done is in step 1, we've targeted the issue. In step 2, we've sorted the issue. And now what we want to do is specify the issue. And this is where you want to identify the top character quality you want to focus on with your child as it relates to the lists and the categories that you made in step 1 and 2. Now, here's what we want to do. We want to think of a character quality as being the combination of mindset and behaviors that result as a response to a challenge in one's life. Now, this is a very, very good working definition for character in anybody's life, not just your kid, but your life as well. The combination of mindset and behaviors that result as a response to a challenge in one's life. And as we build character in ourselves and our children, we're going to learn appropriate behaviors and mindsets in response to the challenges. You see, the problem is lots of times kids develop tendencies to respond in certain ways to challenges in life that aren't appropriate. And it's the job as the parent to come alongside and help coach and teach and train that child to have the appropriate mindset and the appropriate responses when challenges come in life. So it's these responses that reveal the character or the absence of it in a child's life. And so your goal as a parent is to arm your children with a new set of beliefs and a new set of behaviors that result in more appropriate responses to the challenges in life. So if your child responds ineffectively and inappropriately when they have a conflict with their siblings, sibling rivalries, fighting, those types of things, we're going to work to correct that. If your child has a meltdown every time you tell them to do something, even if no matter how small or how big the project, they have a meltdown, or you get the eye roll or the big long or the foot stomp, stuff like that, we're going to be able to address that. And I'm sure you could think of countless examples of these in your own family context. So take a few minutes right now and look over your lists in your category that you've made and identify 3 to 4 character qualities that you'd like your child to develop as it relates to the specific weakness that you've identified in step 2. Now, before you do that, I want to give you a few examples of character qualities. I always work better when I have a couple examples to get the ball rolling, to get my mind in the right place. So character qualities could be things like caring, cautiousness, cheerfulness, cooperation, dependability, forgiveness, friendliness, generosity, gentleness, helpfulness, honesty, joyful, loving, kind, mannerly, obedient, patient, quiet, reasonable, respectful, sensitive, thoughtful, trusting, and unselfishness. That is by no means an exhaustive list. There's character qualities, lots and lots and lots of character qualities that we could list that I didn't put in that list. But hopefully that's enough to kind of get you started, to get your mind thinking about character qualities. And typically they're going to be one word that describes a character quality. We'll get into how that quality plays out, like the definition, in a minute. But again, that's not an exhaustive list, but hopefully it's something to get you rolling. You want to identify 3 to 4 character qualities that you'd like to develop that would be an expression of an appropriate response to the challenge that your child is facing in life. So you have all these issues, these 50 issues, you narrow them down to 3 or 4 categories, and then you pick one of those categories and identify the weakness that your child is displaying when these behaviors are exhibited. And then what's the character quality that they need to develop, that they need to strengthen so that they can overcome this weakness and tendency in their life. Okay? So those are the first 3 steps. Step 4 is bringing the character quality to life. We want to put meat on the bones of this character quality. And here's where the work that you've been doing in the previous steps gets very, very practical. In order for your children to grasp what the character quality is in the context of their life, you're going to need to come up with several context-specific definitions of how this character quality plays out in their lives. What you're not going to do is Google selfishness and write down the textbook dictionary definition of selfishness or being unselfish or patience or whatever the character quality is that you picked. You do not want the dictionary definition. Not at all. Not at all. Don't do that. For example, okay, if Johnny is having trouble minding his own business when other people are talking, you might want to use the character quality of respectfulness. And then the definition would be, what you want to do is you want to define the character quality in terms of the context where it's needed. So if he's having trouble minding his own business when other people are talking, if his brother and sister are talking and he always wants to butt in the conversation, and then it creates conflict, which then creates fights, which then creates, disharmony in the home, and then mom's frustrated, and then dad's frustrated. You know how that snowball goes. So if Johnny's having trouble minding his own business, the definition of respectfulness might be the character quality we want to work on. The definition would be, Johnny, respectfulness means that when other people are talking, I don't interrupt. Boom. It's that simple. In another context, if Johnny is having trouble responding appropriately when he's directed to do something, okay, Johnny, you need to go put your shoes on the shoe rack now and report back to me as soon as you're done. And then Johnny gives the eye roll, the foot stomp, the, oh, come on, like it's a big deal. He needs to work on maybe respectfulness is the character quality. So respectfulness means that when I'm told to do something, I respond with a cheerful, yes, sir, and then immediately begin doing what was asked. You see, these definitions aren't textbook definitions. They're context-specific definitions that address the specific behavior in the context of where this character quality is needed in order to address the weakness. See how that works? Now, you want to really, really work on defining it in that particular practical sense of how it's implemented in everyday life. Now, it's not uncommon for parents to have 8 to 10 working definitions for a single character quality because you want to really get specific with your child in the definition of that character quality so that they know exactly how to behave, how to respond, how to think in the context of when a challenge is presented. You see, when Johnny's told to do something and he doesn't respond appropriately, that's a challenge to him in his heart. And he needs to be able to think appropriately and respond appropriately to that challenge. And when you arm him with the definition of respectfulness and then work with him down the road on doing that, and you practice with him, you are giving him the tools and the resources needed. It's his problem, but you as the parent are coming in as his coach, as his trainer, and as his teacher to help equip him so that he can respond effectively and appropriately in life. And let me tell you, if he can get this when he's 8 years old or 10 years old or 14 years old or 17 years old, he's going to have a much better shot later on in life at responding appropriately and being respectful in other contexts when you're not there, when he's an adult, when he's married, or when he's in the workplace, and those types of things. And you see, this is why it's so important that we parent the heart and not just try to modify behavior. Now, another important note that I want to bring up before we get to step 5 is that if you've already been stressing a particular character quality in your home, you're going to want to use a different word when picking your character quality. So for example, if you've already been telling Johnny that he needs to be, Johnny, you need to be more respectful when you talk to your sister. Or, Johnny, you need to be more respectful when you speak to your mother, or it's disrespectful when you interrupt conversations. Okay, so you don't want to use respectfulness as the character quality because it's worn out. You want to use a different word that brings an element of freshness into this situation. So in this example, I might suggest that you use reasonableness or thoughtfulness instead of respectfulness. You see, it's not the particular word that you pick for the character quality. You can broaden the definition of many words to fit in this context. But what's more important is the definition that you attach to it. So if you've been using a word, lots of times parents might say, Johnny, you need to obey. You need to obey. You're disobeying. And you keep using that word again and again and again. Even though he might need to work on obedience, you're not going to want to use the word obedience because it's worn out. You might use cooperation or something like that. Okay. And then when you give the context specific definitions, that's really when the character quality comes to life. You put meat on the bones and it becomes very, very practical for your child. Now, the importance of these definitions is that they should shed light on how your kids should think and behave in the circumstances and in the context that they are experiencing these challenges. All right, so that's step 4. Step 5 is identifying where the action takes place. So this step is important because if you go back to the list you made in step 1, all 50 or so of those different behaviors, and think about where these behaviors take place. Where does this action most commonly take place? Where do you see these behaviors displayed most frequently? Is it at the dinner table? Is it when Jimmy plays with his brother? Is it when it's time to do chores? Maybe it's bedtime. Maybe it's whenever we're getting ready to go to church in the morning. And, these conflicts begin to arise and there's challenges. Where do you see these behaviors taking place? You want to identify one area where you see these behaviors happening and focus on that. Because by choosing one area you're focusing on with the child for one tendency and one character quality in one context, your approach is very specific and very targeted. This way, when you're parenting and training them, their heart is that this is extremely targeted. And so it's very specific. And then it'll be easier, trying to say that right. It'll be easier for you to recognize and see and document progress with your child by zooming in like this in this area. Now, you might be thinking, okay, if I get so specific and I'm working on one area with one tendency and one character quality, how on earth am I ever going to address these other issues? Well, I'll tell you what, as you build character in your child in this one area, it's going to bleed into other areas. And as they learn and grow in their maturity in this one area, it's going to set them up to be able to grow in maturity faster in other areas. This is kind of just getting the snowball packed and ready so that we can roll it down the hill and build that snowball as it rolls down the hill, as an example there. So don't lose hope. I know we're getting very specific and very targeted, but we're really focusing in so that we can address something very specific, see some progress, and then build from there. The last thing you want to do once you've completed these 5 steps above is have another meeting with your child. We talked in previous sessions about meeting with your child. This is going to be something that you're going to do on a regular basis with your child. And I think a lot of parents are missing this piece to parenting. So you're going to have a meeting with your child. I'll walk you through that and then we're going to wrap it up. As a warning though, it's extremely important how and when you communicate this information to your child. You definitely do not want to do it. You do not want to communicate it, this new process during a time of emotional intensity or during a time of discipline or right after a time of discipline. Your objective though is to effectively communicate your plan to your child and perhaps even get some input from them, and you want to win them over. So you want to do this during a time of peace. You might want to schedule it, make an appointment with your child. You know your child. You know when they're going to be most susceptible to having a good sit-down conversation. It's not going to be long. Hopefully it'll be less than 10 minutes, less than even 5 minutes. We don't want to drag it out. We'll talk about that in a minute. But even if, when you meet with them, you get a vibe that they're not totally on board at this point, or you're getting some resistance from them during the meeting, that's okay. You still want to communicate the plan and then begin working on it. You want to work toward communicating this plan in a positive, supportive, and encouraging way, and in a manner that infuses hope into the situation. As I alluded to earlier, you want to make sure that this meeting is short. You do not want to be lecturing to your child. Sometimes the meeting can actually lead to a good dialogue with your child, and if it does, go with it. Keep the conversation going as long as it's a good, healthy conversation. But I just want to warn you, you shouldn't be going on and on and on while your child is completely disengaged and their eyes glaze over and they're distracted and begin looking into other things. You've gone too long if that begins to happen. You don't want to rehash all your child's previous misbehavior, or share that list of 50 things with them or anything like that. But you want to phrase things in terms of how this new plan is going to help them now to have more peace at home or to be able to have more maturity, but also you want to phrase it and show how this, when they develop this character quality, how it's going to help them in their future with school or with college or with work or with their friends or with their future spouse or when they become parents. The sky's the limit here, but you want to kind of cast vision, so to speak, for how this plan and this process and this program is going to help them as they grow and mature into adults. Because that's really the goal of our parenting, is to launch fully functioning adults into the real world, equipped to be internally motivated in the world in which they live, to do the right thing, to glorify God, to respond appropriately to challenges, to really have a good, strong character. So at this point, once you've communicated the plan, you can end the meeting with them, the formal meeting. But as you go throughout the rest of the day and in the coming days and weeks, make sure to point out positive examples of when this character quality is observed. It may be with them, it may be with your spouse, it may be out in public, it may be on something you're watching on television, maybe with their siblings, but be careful with that one. Make sure you're not comparing their behavior with others, but just trying to point out positive examples of the desired behavior, or the desired character quality that we're trying to develop within them. This will help raise awareness in your child's mind. The awareness level is very important, because up to this point, they're kind of blind to the character quality. And your job is to raise their awareness level with respect to this new character quality. So now, sometimes after the first meeting, parents can notice good positive changes in their child. Most of the time, however, one meeting isn't all that's needed. Over the next several days and weeks, continue to work on raising the awareness level of your child by pointing out positive examples of the character quality, talking to them about the character quality, and be sure to point out and praise your child when they are displaying progress, when they are displaying this character quality that you're trying to develop in them. When they show it, when they use it, praise it, point it out, give them lots of affirmation. Don't do it in a false manner. Don't be really cheesy about it, but you do want to make sure that you are recognizing it. Now, if you don't see changes immediately in your child, don't feel like you're doing something wrong. Just keep working the plan consistently. All children are different. Some put up a lot of resistance at first and need to see that you're serious, that you're firm, that you're going to be consistent. Other kids will just melt down at the first sign of authority in their children. I shouldn't say melt down. I should say melt or comply, if you will. As we go, we're going to add more tools and more steps that you can take to further help your child to make positive change and positive progress with respect to their character quality. Now, before your child exhibits any behavior, a decision takes place in the heart. And this is really, really what we're trying to address. And this is why it's so important for us to begin training our children's hearts and not simply trying to modify their behavior with reward and punishment, threats and intimidation, which is often what we resort to as parents. Those are our default modes of operation, and we need to make the change ourselves in how we parent. So the steps that we've taken today will work greatly toward training the hearts of your children. All right, fellas, that's it for this session. By way of review, we began developing a plan for where we want to go with our child. We took 5 steps today. We, number 1, targeted the issue. Number 2, sorted the issue. Number 3, specified the issue. Number 4, brought life to the character quality. And number 5, we identified where the action takes place. Now, after you take these 5 steps, you want to have another meeting with your child to communicate the plan with them. And then in the days and weeks to come, you want to point out positive examples, continue talking about the plan, the character quality, and inspire and encourage and equip your child to make the change that they need to make. All right, guys, next time we do one of these, we're going to get more into mapping out where you want to go with your child. We're going to give you some more tools and resources and some ideas for developing and specifying the plan even more and helping you out as you go along. All right, guys, hope that's helpful to you. See you then, and take care. All right, gentlemen, that's all we have for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope our conversation was a blessing to you and that you leave this episode better equipped to be the man and the father God has called and created you to be. If so, then I ask that you please leave us a 5-star rating and a quick written review in iTunes. Then make sure you head on over to the show notes to get all of the resources for this episode. While you're there, you can take part in our 5 Days to Be a Better Dad challenge, as well as get involved with our free Facebook community. All right, gentlemen, until next week, remember Proverbs 27:17. As iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. Stay sharp.